Are you bored? Bored of casting the same old spells in your tabletop role-playing games? How about if you were able to cast a Wall of Horse, which is a 20-foot-high dome of pure equine power? If that's the case, then Coffee Steak Studios has got the content for you. You can either check them out by going to their itch.io store or becoming a Patreon of their patron campaign. There'll be links in the show notes. And now, on with the show, Wizard. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for December, because it's getting to Christmas time, and Christmas time brings, lots of food to the table, lots of drink to the table, and then as everybody stumbles from the table to go and sit down in front of the television, somebody actually might suggest a game. Now, if you're in a small room and there's maybe only a couple of you, you might roll out the traditional things. You might roll out some new ones. Most of you will probably roll out something in the middle. However, if it was a big, huge Christmas dinner and maybe there was 20 or 30 of you, you might decide to roll out what you would call a mega game. A mega game, there's only one thing to do. You need an expert when you need a mega game. And you can't just have it up here north. You've maybe got to go a bit south. You maybe got to go a bit southwest. You've maybe got to go and speak to Southwest Megagames. Because joining me from Southwest Megagames, I've got John Mizon, who has no idea what he's getting himself into. So hello, John.
Hello. Hello. I indeed don't.
How you doing, sir? I was going to say you well, but I think we're both on the tail end of something, aren't we?
Yeah, as we established in our pre-podcast emails, I'm slightly under the weather at the moment, but I'll power through this.
We'll see how you get on. You might tap out halfway through. Just say, no, this is enough. I've had enough. I can't continue. I'm off to my bed. You've kind of finished me off. To everybody who's listening to this for the first time, the reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts out there about board games and tabletop. We continue our research. We continue not to be able to find anything. And the other reason that we do this is some damn fool recommended John get in contact with us to come on the podcast. So we appreciate all these people who lead people our way so we can trap them. That's just the way that we work. That's just the way that we like to work. I guess, starting off, to talk about yourself, did you work your way up? That's the worst question ever. Did you start on small games and then work your way up to kind of mega games?
I mean, yes. I mean, it's sort of only two steps, but in a sense, yes. Before I was into Megagames, I'd played quite a few board games. I got into board games when I was around 18, 19.
All right, okay.
In the sense that we would understand, playing some of the newer games, some of the more modern designs, as opposed to just your regular Monopolies and stuff. And I played a little bit of RPGs at the time. I now play a lot more. But yeah, and it was about 4 years ago that I got into Megagames. As I sort of learned about them from a video that Shut Up and Sit Down made, who do a lot of board game stuff.
Yeah.
They made a video about a mega game in, I want to say, 2014, and that made me think about them a lot more until I eventually ran one. And then after I ran one, I started going to ones that other people were running too.
Was that like I know that the Quinn's and Matt went on and kind of wax lyrical about, I think it was it Two Booms in a Room?
I don't know, I'm not familiar.
Something along those lines. It's a game where there's a bomb and people play different kind of factions and government things and you go about and stuff like that. And I remember the kind of talking about that kind of thing, kind of ages and ages ago. And it was only when I saw you when we were kind of chatting through email and you sent the link to the stuff, it kind of went, maybe that's it, or maybe I've got it kind of completely, completely
well,
wrong.
I mean, yes and no. So I have actually had Two Rooms in a Boom. I think I remember looking it up a while back. So Two Rooms in a Boom, I think the main thing is whoever designed Two Rooms in a Boom, I don't think they had heard of Megagames, so I don't know if they've ever tried to call it a Megagame. But of course, the one thing that Megagame fans love and hate in equal measure is trying to define what a Megagame is. So whether or not Two Rooms in a Boom might count is up for debate, but it has enough players to probably count in that sense. I reckon it's because doesn't it play in about like 15 minutes or something? I can't remember. It's like a game of resistance in a sort of.
I think it depends. It depends on.
So,
I think it depends on how many people kind of get involved and what they want to do in terms of the roles, really.
Yeah, so I'd say most mega games would be much longer and have a much more kind of in-depth, complex structure and mechanics than Two Rooms in a Boom. But Two Rooms in a Boom might be like a sort of mega game on the extreme end of the spectrum, which is designed to be incredibly quick and incredibly simple. But it does have that layer of complexity where there's enough players for the simple number of players in the game to be a level of complexity.
But what kind of first kind of dragged you in? Do you remember the kind of the defining moment where you went, yeah, this is quite cool. I kind of want to, because in all things, as with all things, there's a difference between experiencing something and then grabbing it by the horns and saying, right, I'm going to go ahead and try and forge my own version of this and kind of get really, really kind of deep into it. I'm
not sure, really. It was sort of a gradual process. I remember watching the video. I thought that was interesting. Maybe I'll try one out. But at the time, pretty much the only place I could go to play one was London, and that was far too far away for me at the time. And I had a look around, and I had a think, and I started, just doodling little notes, just based purely on what I'd seen in the video. Like, if I was to design a similar game, what would it look like? And Jim Wallman, the guy who designed Watch the Skies, which is the mega game that's in that Sharpened It Down video, he was selling at the time, and is selling in a slightly more updated version now, a pack you could buy with all the PDFs materials required to run the game. So it was like all the rule books, all the team briefing, all the the things that you need to print to put on the map counters and stuff. He was selling that, so I bought that for inspiration and read it through and thought, well, this is just much better than what I've done so far, and threw away everything I'd worked on. Just did that instead. So that's what I ended up running, and then got quite into that. And once I'd run it and had a look through the design and everything, that's when I got, I guess, really crystallized my love for the genre, because I could really get into the whole dynamic of these big structures and all these different players role playing and interacting with each other and trying to come up with solutions or compete or whatever it is they're doing.
Do you need to be quite outgoing and almost theatrical in your approach to these things? I mean, you have to. Are you taking almost like a kind of a almost like a LARPing type role? Are you going about and guiding people on how they do? Or, I mean, how does a structure kind of form of a game? Do you brief people and then let them get on with it? Or are you kind of going about making sure that everybody's kind of doing what they're meant to be doing?
I think there's two questions there. And the first question about how much of it is sort of a theatrical, very outgoing performance. I think there's a spectrum, because some players, some players come from the LARPing community, some players come from the theatre community, and some players are just hardcore tabletop role players, and they will definitely come in and they'll love the story and the characters, and they'll just really get into pretending to be someone with a particular personality or set of objectives. And that's definitely there. But some people have described megagames as role-playing a job rather than role-playing a character, which is interesting. And the other part of that spectrum is, of course, the megagame itself, because obviously there's all kinds of different megagames. Some of them are far more kind of serious and procedural, and some of them are far more about characters and personalities. And most will fall somewhere in between. So there's sort of roles for both of those people depending on the game, where some people are required to more sort of act out, whereas others can sort of just like focus on what they're trying to achieve and like quietly make those choices and then search out the information they want. The other question you asked was a much easier answer, which is, do I just set people off and let them go? Yes. Basically, you at the start of the game, obviously, you'll get your rule book and your briefings. You'll get those in advance, so you can read what the rules are, and you'll read what your team briefing or your character's briefing is, and it'll say, you are, for example, the president of France, and you have these goals for what you want to achieve in the future. And they'll typically be things like, make sure you're still a beacon of diplomacy for the world. Yeah. Don't let your country's reputation suffer. Keep your country's economy strong. And then once they've got that, the game starts, and I don't really give anyone any directions as to what to do next. It's all about how they bounce off each other and what actions they choose to take, and it's all about having a very organic story.
Does it end up being quite a kind of an immersive gameplay type of event? I mean, do you see people have you seen situations where you've went like, oh, that's an interesting way to kind of deal from that? I must kind of note that down and see if I can bring that in a later date. Yeah, all the time, really. People really get into the situation, and it's all about that buy-in. Same with RPGs and LARPs, I imagine, where you require everyone to believe in the world that you've constructed and to play out the actions accordingly. And as a result, some people will think, well, what would I do here? And in fact, in Megagames, there's a pretty common sort of idea where the game has umpires or GMs, which we call control team. Yeah. And if the game mechanics don't allow you to do a specific thing, but in theory that specific thing could happen in the world that you're playing in, you can ask control if you can do it, and they'll do a sort of a mix of freeform stuff or, mix and match some risk and some resources to see if you can attempt whatever it is you want to attempt. And that can have effects on the game world, be they political or mechanical or whatever. So, for example, there's a game that I really love called Infinite Horizons, which is about there's a humanity in the sort of semi-near future discovers a new planet for the first time that they could possibly live on, and everyone puts their hopes into settling this planet. But obviously, everyone's still very competitive. All these super governments and massive corporations who are competing, and obviously, there's a lot of mechanics for trade and exploring the map and building mines and fuel refineries and whatever. But also, you've got the government of the colony, the new colony, who are just trying to make everything work. And they've got these laws that they can make. And with some exceptions, these laws are basically whatever they decide to come up with. They can, put taxes on certain activities or certain people or certain resources, or they could make certain actions illegal. And, these completely of their own ideas. And it's about how that shapes the game by control implementing those throughout the game. Oftentimes these ideas will be more like individual players trying to get around some problem or trying to come up with a creative solution to some issue they're having. But that's sort of a slightly more institutionalized version of this that works well for the explanation, at least. Is it almost like going into like a much more granular level? Because, I mean, and one of the things I think about, like, say, if I'm looking at just off the cuff at Infinite Horizons, I see hexes, I see counters, I see little pieces of card, and part of me's thinking, is this almost like a little kind of Twilight Imperium type thing? But instead of you saying, right, I'm going to move here and take over this place, it's like, well, this is fine, but by you moving here, you've got to engage with this person over here who deals with all the resources. You've got to deal with this person over here who deals with the military might. You've then maybe got to speak to this person here who's the ambassador for the planet you're trying to kind of take over, kind of thing. So you go in kind of like deeper. So somebody that would maybe be taking a move on, as I say, on maybe Twilight Imperium or Scythe or something like that. It's almost like you're going in and saying, right, okay, well, you've taken your move, but you've now got to deal with these 5 or 6 people that are maybe going to be affected by your move, and how that kind of plays out. Is that kind of close to what it would be like?
I mean, yeah, I think you've more or less hit the nail on the head there. That's pretty correct. Like, imagine you're playing Twilight Imperium, but rather than, I don't know, say 6 teams all controlled by one person, each of those 6 teams has 5 people in it. And, one of them is running some kind of other separate trade game, which is they're trying to manage. And one of them's trying to, forge laws in some wider view UN equivalent, United Nations equivalent. That's trying to make everyone sort of work together, or at least try and avoid mass conflict or something. And yeah, you can totally do things that's going to annoy other people because other people live in that space. And another way to describe it, which might also kind of help the explanation, is, imagine that you're playing an RPG and your 3 characters walk into town. What if everyone in that town was also a player character?
Yeah.
You buy things, it affects the economy. You attack people, you're going to make enemies, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's absolutely a thing there. The one thing I would say is your idea of do something annoying first, get asked questions later. You may want to try the alternate strategy of checking out if these people will ally with you, or perhaps just kind of not attack you for doing something before you do it, diplomacy-wise, and then do it. But of course, both strategies are available.
Does this not require an immense amount of work? I mean, because you mentioned like a role-playing game kind of walking in to the town, and normally what would happen is just, well, what you're doing is like, well, you see a young boy bouncing a ball. Well, I'm going to steal the ball. And it's like, well, you just happen to kind of steal the ball off the boss of the village, so he's now going to come after you kind of thing. But is it a case that you have to be... I don't know, are you kind of... I take it, do you just kind of like give people guidance and then just let them kind of go and give them kind of like their boundaries, as opposed to being like a GM who would have to think, oh my goodness, what happens if they go left instead of going right here and go completely off the wrong path? How do I pull them back in again? Are you just saying, right, well, as long as you can kind of comply within these set kind of boundaries, you just crack on with kind of whatever you would like to do, really, and just see how it plays out?
Yeah, I mean, so that's sort of the core of a lot of mega game design is how do you make sure that it's not too intensive for the people trying to make the game work. So that would be the idea of, like in an RPG, you're not necessarily just going in and the GM's doing everything. There's, there's a rule book and there's a map, and the GM's got some character sheets for NPCs in case you want to do anything with them. So in Megagames, you'd have a map with some set rules for how that works that the players would then understand, and you wouldn't need, GM labor to come into that. But then every now and then, once they want to, bypass some issue, or put into effect some law, and putting laws in, for example, there'll be a procedure for that. So players know what to do with 80% of it. They might just come to, and then if this law takes effect, how exactly would that affect the game? And Control could figure out exactly what would make sense for that kind of resolution. So it's a mix of, having a rule book and mechanics that can do like the brunt of the work and the interactions, but the GMs, the control team, are still there to facilitate anything, else that's going on. So they can give it that extra level of sort of options and realism.
Does it help you to kind of bring in kind of what you would call kind of gamification into certain kind of situations as well? Because I had a guest on the other week who was bringing in kind of basically gamification into kind of day-to-day kind of lessons. So would you see mega games as being able to say, okay, well, let's take this into maybe a corporate situation or an office situation where maybe communication needs to be touched on, and management and responsibility in the chain of command needs to be kind of looked at, but you can't just have 20 people sitting around a table and asking them to think, to tell you what they think is wrong, because in this situation nobody thinks they're wrong and nobody's kind of willing to change, but you have to have an alternate way of doing that. Is that something you guys would also kind of look at if a business kind of approached you and said, could you help with team building, but I'm not wanting to send 20 folk to paintball for a day because somebody else gets hurt, but is there a way we could kind of involve almost like some business lessons at the same time while everybody's kind of learning something.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing about Megagames is that they're really, really good at simulating big structures, big organizations, or just sort of any big issue where there's a lot of people or a lot of different factors in play. And they're great at showing you the issues that arise in those situations with communication and logistics and all those kinds of things, where you're trying to make things, be they ideas or messages or resources going from one person to another, or just managing kind of wider scale operations. Megagames absolutely play really well in trying to play out those scenarios. And in fact, Megagames are almost sort of deeply linked to a lot of professional simulation gaming and professional wargaming. Which, real world governments or agencies or corporations will use to, predict what might happen if a certain scenario played out. And I think I read about recently someone was trying to predict how AI would affect the future of warfare. And the way they did this was the team who represented the team that had AI were allowed to see the map and what was going on immediately, whereas the team who weren't had to stay in another room and have other people tell them what was going on. And then they'd make a decision, and then the people, the go-betweens would go to the room and do it. So it's to represent how AI goes a lot faster without actually using technology to do that. So that's just sort of an interesting tweak you can do. But there's all kinds of situations where it's like, how will communication will be affected? How will logistics be affected? The earliest Megagames, some of them were essentially about war games where people had, they'd been playing, 2-on-2 war games or whatever. And they thought, in real war, the communications and logistics are a massive problem that, has a huge effect on the actual outcome of a campaign.
Yeah.
But we're not really seeing that here. So they sort of did Megagames to sort of try and see how that would happen. Like, well, actually, if you try and do this campaign across ancient Greece, but, there's 30 players trying to run the campaign at once, and they all have their own little region or their own little group of troops to command.
Yeah.
How difficult does it get based on, everyone actually trying to be on the same page, everyone trying to, are people actually loyal to each other, or are they building up like regional identities? Where's the resources going? All that kind of stuff that you just couldn't get if the game was only like 4 or 5 players. So there's definitely room for that. I was talking recently to someone who teaches children about various science subjects, and again about how possibly you could represent evolution of animals and how it works based on, you put all these different types of animals together and some of them will mutate in certain ways, and how successful are they? And you can actually see it in action as this big kind of grand scale issue with all these different types of animals and all these different types of mutations on these animals and how it affects, what survives and what doesn't.
In this kind of scenario, is it easier to get people to kind of get involved if they think it is a kind of a game? Have you seen people that, who would never probably be the type of people who you would say they've never touched a role-playing game in their life, and yet they really got something kind of out of the experience, and in fact they couldn't believe they'd actually played a game all this time, and it could have been this involved in this kind of series? Do you kind of get that coming at you on a kind of a regular basis as well?
I think it depends. There are definitely people out there who don't think much of gaming, and just sort of the word alone puts them off, and I think it's not very serious, so that serious people shouldn't be engaging with it. But, there are other people out there who just, would love the idea of something more engaging or more interesting than, just sitting in front of a PowerPoint presentation for an hour. So, I think it depends. But I imagine there's been a few people who have sort of been convinced of how interesting and educational it can be after coming in not expecting such an experience.
How long does it take to kind of put together a game? As in, how long does it take you to kind of design from scratch? I
mean, it varies because, I kind of spread it across different months, and I have to balance it personally with admin and stuff. But I'd say most people take somewhere between 6 months to 18 months from the initial idea to building it up and coming up with more of a core rules base, and then fleshing it out and finally building the actual game and physically and arranging a date and putting it on. I'd say that's sort of your time frame for most people. I don't know how many of those 6 to 18 months are full work, but that seems to be the actual real time length of time.
And I mean, do you have like a network? Is there a network of Megagames? I mean, is there a Northeast Megagame kind of company as well? Do you kind of all
not quite that literally, but there's sort of different groups and organizations have sort of popped up around everywhere. Pretty much any population center big enough, someone's decided that they're going to be the person who wants to run Megagames there. So, and it'd be worth putting links to these in the description, if that's okay, because then people can find their local ones. But, if you're in London, then you've got the original Megagame makers, and you've also got Horizon Megagames, which was started by my friend Alex to run slightly different styles of Megagames to what Megagame makers were doing, and also just to get more opportunities for Megagame designers out there. But then you've also got Reading Megagames, who are running Megagames in Reading. You've got Southampton Megagames, which is where my friend Zane runs his Megagames, and he's to go design Infinite Horizons. You've got Cambridge Megagames, which is a group of designers in Cambridge. You've got I'm almost certainly going to forget at least one person, so forgive me. But you've got Pennine Megagames, which run Megagames in the Manchester, Leeds and Sheffield area. You've got True North Megagames, which run Megagames in Scotland and the far north of England. And all kinds of others, especially, I mean, that's just, England and Scotland. If you go international, there's even more, way more. And there's a website called Megagame Assembly, which some of my friends made a while ago, which sort of tries to collate as much of the Megagame stuff going on as possible. And they've got like a calendar and a list of Megagame stuff on there, so you can try and find one there if there's one that I've completely missed, which I'm almost certain has happened.
Well, we will make sure that we gather up everything and put them in the show notes, so nobody will be left out. And if there is anybody...
and Southwest Megagames, which is the business that I run, so I'm surprised I forgot it. And that runs, anywhere from sort of Bournemouth to Cardiff and everywhere in between, Bristol, Cheltenham, Swindon, Oxford, Reading, etc.
Yeah. Do you, in terms of kind of like, do you ever look at kind of like smaller stuff then? Do you design kind of looking at smaller games for like 5 to 10 people, or do you say, well, that kind of market's kind of done? I'm quite happy with concentrating on kind of where we are and what we're kind of doing just now.
I mean, from a amateur sense, I do run sort of my own custom RPGs quite a lot for my friends and stuff like that. So I still do a lot of smaller scale gaming, and I discuss design with friends sometimes when they're like thinking about designing a board game or something. From a business perspective, I am in the middle of putting together a 10-player pseudo mega game. Some people want to call them killer games. Some people want to call them mini mega games. I don't know, but it's sort of a new subgenre that's slightly experimental at the moment. These sort of games that have a lot of mega game DNA in them, but are a bit too small to really definitely be mega games. And that's about bank heists, and it's got like 10 people, where some of the people are trying to rob the bank and some of the people are the authorities outside trying to stop them. Wow. So that's the answer to that question is, yes, I'm about to, I guess. Not currently, but, in the middle of that particular design.
Do you think things like, with the kind of the abundance of kind of like escape rooms that seem to be kind of popping up, does that kind of help kind of people looking beyond kind of board games as something that sits around a table that you've got like 4 friends and that's kind of it? That's helped to kind of expand and actually go, this could be somebody that doesn't kind of normally play games?
It's one of those things where I'm not sure. So the fun fact here is I also work part-time at an escape room. So I've seen many people come through the escape room doors, and the vast majority of them I wouldn't describe as gamers, in the sort of very specific definition sense. I wouldn't expect them to be the kind of people who play board games or role-playing games a lot or anything like that. They're sort of just, they're looking for something to do with their kids or just something on a rainy day, or they just like puzzles. And, that's great. And obviously it's brilliant. But I don't know how much crossover there is. I think the escape room popularity is mainly due to the accessibility of puzzles. Like so many, you can buy puzzle books in every W.H. Smith's.
Yeah.
They're such a common, popular notion that like the idea of, it's puzzles, but like it's a bit more intense and it's a day out kind of thing, is what's really brought them in. And that's not to say there definitely aren't people out there who maybe did an escape room and got into gaming or decided to experiment more with what they did for their fun times and activities. I just don't know how much crossover there is, but at the same time, that's completely anecdotal evidence on my part.
Yeah. I'm just kind of interested because I think what you're doing is important because it can get people who, anything that gets somebody kind of looking into the hobby is a good thing. The kind of the more people that we have kind of looking at what can be done and taking some enjoyment from a set of rules, which is I always found fascinating, that you can tell people, no, you're not allowed to do that, and they have the best fun ever because they've got to kind of look at doing other things. I think anything that kind of makes people more aware of there's kind of these types of games that are out there are actually, is a very, very always a very, very good thing. Are these the type of things that you would look at? I mean, would you love to work on an official licensed kind of mega game? Would that be something that you would ever consider like to do? Like a professional, like a widespread IP or something? Yeah. I mean, if somebody says, okay, it's the Rebels versus the Empire and it's Star Wars, you can do what you want. And would you be rubbing your hands with glee, or would you be hiding under the table because of the potential expectations from having to do something like that?
Oh, yeah, that bit you said at the end. I mean, so yeah, from a design perspective, it's always really interesting. As long as there's something there in whatever the world is, as long as there's something there in the world to explore from a mega game point of view, if there's enough factions, if there's enough agents or powers or actors in whatever's going on, that having enough of them in one place at one time to determine what happens in the situation. Yeah. How do you explore that? What are the mechanics for that? How do the players interact with each other? What are the levers they pull? What is the story that could be told? There are many multiple stories that could be told. So yeah, I'd be really interested to explore that with any number of great, IPs with really in-depth worlds. In fact, one of the games I designed is called Den of Wolves, which is it's sort of inspired by Battlestar Galactica. It definitely isn't a Battlestar Galactica game. Yes. None of the characters or anything. Yes. But it's just sort of you're trying to survive. There's a lot of internal politics, and it's a really dire situation where you just keep running away from this merciless enemy. And so that was, me saying, I've seen that world. I think there's plenty to explore in something that looked like that. The idea that there's people out there, if I was somehow became very popular by, if all the nerd websites suddenly started talking about this IP I just bought, then I'd probably have a big demand. I'd be very stressed out by the idea of people thinking I'd ruined their favorite IP. But yeah, as long as that kind of expectation wasn't around, I'd really love to get into it from a design perspective. So many great worlds out there in fiction.
What would you do? Well, I mean, I guess that is the golden question, John, is what if I said, right, okay, I am the doctor of IPs and I am going to give you all of the IPs, Mr. Mizon. What IP can I drop in your lap that's just going to have you clicking your heels as you walk up the street, beaming at everybody, what's going to make your day?
Oh, I don't know. I'm terrible at pulling ideas out of the ether, but I know something that sort of has the sort of, something that has some really intense politics and some real crunchy systems. So Game of Thrones would be a pretty good one. Yeah. In fact, there have been games that are sort of based on Game of Thrones in the same way I did Den of Wolves. Or The Expanse, if you're familiar with The Expanse. Yeah. There's some great sort of, regionalism versus centrism, powers, suspicion, politics, personalities. In both of those, I think, would make some really great megagame material.
So if anybody's listening and you have just a major IP just kicking about the castle kind of thing, you know, is this the type of thing you would go to kind of cons and stuff like that? I mean, do you go to like Gen Con, UK Games Expo, things like that, to kind of spread the word and things? Yeah,
so actually last UK Games Expo was the first time I'd personally taken a mega game there. There'd been a mega game there a couple of years ago as well, that I kind of helped run, but I wasn't running it. But yeah, last year I ran Watch the Skies Second Sight, which, if you remember Watch the Skies from earlier, was a sort of reboot / modified version of Watch the Skies that I've been running recently.
Yeah.
So I ran that at UK Games Expo. That's actually where Jamie from the Giant Brain heard about me, because he was the president of Japan. He did a really amazing article which basically just went through the whole story of what happened.
Yeah. He's a budding actor as well, so I'm sure if he was involved in any way, shape or form, he would have been absolutely fantastic at it.
So that was UK Games Expo. Hopefully I'll be running another game at UK Games Expo next year as well, but it's sort of too early for that kind of organisation at this point. Interestingly, Den of Wolves, the games I mentioned before, I've sold the PDF pack of that to multiple people, and some of those people have actually run it at Gen Con. It was run twice at Gen Con this previous season, and they ran it at Shucks as well, the Shut Up and Sit Down convention in Canada.
Yeah.
And it seemed to go really well there. There was a slight thing where the people running it misread the rules and accidentally doubled the amount of enemy combatants when there should have been half the amount, and some ships may have exploded, but apparently it was a good day nonetheless.
It was a good learning experience. It's the Kobayashi Maru of mega games. What's going to happen now?
They were playing it on like extreme difficulty, basically, which, you know, it's always a fun experiment.
I mean, in things like Den of Wolves, does it need... It says in a player count of approximately 40 people. I mean, do you need kind of that many people? Could you get away with 20? Or is it just basically, look, the more the merrier? If you can't run these things with 10 people, it's just never ever going to happen.
I think there's the lower limit. And I think, interestingly, it is about 20. You're really sort of nailing it down to just the absolute core elements of where the decisions are being made and how many people you need to actually move resources around and have discussions about things when you hit about 20. I did actually have a conversation with someone very recently who said, we're not sure if we're going to be able to get 20 people. Do you have any suggestions? And like at that point, you could break it down into something that's less of a mega game, but like still works, like a little bit more of a political simulation with some, unusually constructed turns where people will go off and try and trade, and then they'll come back and try and make a law about something, and then they'll go off and trade again. So I think there's like still options for running the game below 20. But like I said, I think it's the real sort of intended design experience will start becoming very difficult if you can't get at least 20 people.
Yeah. Because as you said, you mentioned you can buy Den of Wolves.
Yes.
You can get it directly from yourselves by emailing you. Is that kind of like the PDF? Is that the kind of the PDF pack? So you send them the files that they can then print and play and make up and everything like how they want it to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I do offer, if people particularly want a physical manufacturing service for an extra cost, if they want it shipped off to them with all the pieces. But yeah, it's a standard protocol is just a PDF pack, and then they can make some of the stuff themselves.
And would you turn up at people's places to actually help them run it if they were kind of close in the kind of the vicinity as well?
In theory, what I've done is sort of the thing with that is that if it's close enough to me to run, then I've probably run it there myself.
Yeah.
Alex, for example, who is my friend who runs games in London for Horizon Megagames. I ran Den of Wolves in London twice through Horizon Megagames. So Alex arranged everything, and I ran the game there. And a friend of mine, she did run the game in Switzerland, and she offered to like pay for my travel over there if the budget could stretch.
Yeah.
And that would have been a fun, weekend trip to Switzerland and run my game there. Unfortunately, the budget didn't end up stretching that far, but it was something I was up for at the time.
Have you got expensive taste? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I did demand first class flight only, and had to be and the hotel had to be 5-star, and they had to have gold plated Skittles.
Well, I've seen rumours on the Facebook groups that you can be a bit of a diva now and again, but I didn't want to kind of out you in public,
it's always the haters.
It's always the internet, so that's going to probably one of the things as well. Has there been? Have you seen kind of an impact on things like Board Game Geek? I mean, have you got groups in places like that? If people are just wanting to kind of read maybe people's reports of how they found the game and stuff like that, do you have can they find kind of information about kind of mega games on Board Game Geek as well?
Sort of. It's sort of a weird thing where if someone starts talking about it in another forum, it's sort of whatever they are doing. So, for example, people will write articles like Jamie did about what the story was of their day at a mega game, and they'll post it to their personal blog or their website or their local board gaming forum or their YouTube channel. So you'll just sort of find all these third party things out there. I do it myself on my own website. I post blog articles about sort of the story of my day as a certain character at other people's mega games. So there's sort of that out there, but I don't know if there's any kind of formal collection. The Mega Game Assembly website or the Mega Game Maker's original website is sort of the only place where you'll get more kind of collation of what's going on.
Okay. If people have listened along tonight and they're saying, well, this sounds mega. Sorry.
People are saying that to me all the time, constantly.
I bet you never. It's like the Richard Wilson, I don't believe it kind of thing. And I'm only bringing that up because I saw that. It'd
be really funny if I go up to him and say it really loud.
Yeah, so I recently saw that episode of Father Ted as well, and I was like, I wonder. Yeah. But no, I mean, if people have listened along tonight and they've thought, well, this sounds like it's worthwhile kind of finding out some more information, or I could definitely get a group together. Where can they find you, and where do you exist on the internet webs?
You can find me on my website, which is www.swmegagames.com. The word mega, the word games. Mm-hmm. Sorry, not .com, .co.uk. Mm-hmm. Oh, God. And then there's like a contact link where you'll find my email. It's contact@swmegagames.co.uk.
Okay.
You can just email me, or you can find me on Facebook or Twitter at Southwest Mega Games. Always happy to chat about design, or if you're curious about buying a pack, if you want to play a game somewhere, you can feel free to ask me, or check out the previously mentioned groups and websites. See if you can find a game you're interested in or that you're willing to travel to.
That sounds good. And as I say, we will make sure that we put all the links in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then jump onto the internet and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all the different worn out faces, worn out places, bright and early for the daily races. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and if you want to join our little Facebook page, it's on facebook.com/We're Not Wizards. If you like what you've listened to tonight, there's a couple of things you can do. First thing is, you can tell somebody else about us. Imagine you're in a room with another 39 people playing a mega game, and they're all going to go, well, what do we do after we've done this? You can say, well, here, you could listen to this podcast, and they could tell us about us, because we could then spread like a horrific virus, I guess. The other thing you can do is you can jump onto Apple Podcasts and drop us a rating, drop us a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. Don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. We're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. John Mizon. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on. It's always great to talk about Megagames some more. I don't do it enough, apparently.
Apparently. There is only 2 more things to do, and this next thing is really, really important. I cannot express how important in this thing is. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, John?
No.
Good, that's good enough for me.
Okay, cool.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from John. Say goodbye, John.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And if you're sick of kind of being inside with looking at the same kind of 4 faces playing games, and you want to get out there, get yourself a big group, do something different, manage little systems, manage big systems, take over planets, take over cities, and be diplomats and war people and things like that, then jump on and check yourself out a mega game. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.